I had always believed that honesty was the foundation of any relationship, the invisible thread that bound two people together through trust, respect, and shared vision. When I met my fiancée, I thought I had found someone whose values aligned with mine, someone with whom I could imagine a life built on openness and mutual understanding. Our relationship developed with intensity, marked by moments of joy, laughter, and shared dreams. I envisioned a future where our plans, ambitions, and love were fully transparent, and I dedicated myself completely to the bond we were creating. As the engagement approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Every detail was meticulously planned. From the ceremony to the reception, from the guest list to the smallest decoration. I imagined walking down the aisle, pledging my life to someone I trusted implicitly, someone whose word and intentions I believed were aligned with mine. In my mind, our shared dreams were clear and mutual. We had both agreed on the kind of life we wanted, the family we envisioned, and the way we would navigate the complexities of adulthood together. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I began to notice subtle inconsistencies. Small things that initially seemed trivial began to accumulate in a pattern that caused unease. Conversations about family planning, living arrangements, and future priorities revealed small discrepancies. Moments where her responses seemed carefully constructed, rehearsed, or incomplete. I brushed it off at first, attributing my concern to pre-wedding anxiety and the natural stress of planning such a significant event. Yet the unease persisted, a quiet, knowing sense that something essential had been concealed. Then the truth emerged. Through careful observation and confirmation, I discovered that my fiancée had not been honest about a fundamental aspect of her life. She already had a child. The revelation was shocking not only because it contradicted everything she had promised, but because it was a deliberate concealment that affected the very core of our shared vision. The child-free life she had assured me existed was not real, and this absence of honesty undermined every assumption I had built about our future together. The discovery was devastating. I felt betrayed, not just by the secret itself but by the intentionality behind it. The foundation of trust I had relied upon crumbled instantly, leaving me confronted with a reality I could not reconcile. Everything I had believed about our relationship, the alignment of values, the clarity of shared goals, the transparency that I assumed existed, was now cast into doubt. The future I had envisioned with her was no longer possible under the terms we had discussed, and the plans we had made could no longer proceed without compromising my principles. In the days following the revelation, I reflected deeply on the nature of trust, commitment, and honesty. I realized that a marriage is not merely a ceremony or a series of promises. It is a pact built on full disclosure, mutual respect, and the willingness to share one's life openly. Concealing a child, a fundamental aspect of one's life and responsibilities, was not a minor omission or an oversight. It was a profound violation of trust, an intentional deception that struck at the very heart of the partnership we were supposed to have. I considered the implications of proceeding with the wedding despite knowing the truth. Could I reconcile this deception and still commit fully to a life together? Could I build a family on a foundation compromised by dishonesty? Every scenario I imagined led to the same conclusion. Any attempt to move forward would be an act of self-betrayal, a compromise of values that I could not accept. The wedding, meticulously planned and anticipated, had become untenable. The life I had imagined with her could not exist under these conditions. The decision to cancel the wedding was neither impulsive nor easy. It required confronting my own expectations, acknowledging the emotional investment I had made, and accepting the profound sense of loss that accompanies the end of a deeply cherished dream. I recognized that the pain of ending the engagement would be intense, both for myself and for those who had been involved in the planning. Yet the alternative, proceeding under false pretenses, was a far greater betrayal of integrity. In the aftermath, I grappled with a complex mix of emotions: grief for the relationship I thought I had, anger at the deception, and a sense of relief that I had discovered the truth before making a lifelong commitment. The wedding, once a symbol of hope and future happiness, became a reminder of the fragility of trust and the importance of transparency. I reflected on how easily a carefully constructed illusion could mask fundamental truths, and how critical it is to confront reality, even when it is painful or inconvenient. The cancellation prompted a period of introspection. I examined the relationship in its entirety, tracing the trajectory of affection, commitment, and decision-making. I asked myself whether there had been warning signs I had ignored, whether I had been naive in my assumptions, and what lessons I could take into future relationships. I realized that while my fiancé's actions were a profound breach of trust, the responsibility to recognize patterns, verify truths, and maintain clarity in expectations rested with both partners. The experience, though painful, offered an opportunity for growth, discernment, and the reaffirmation of my personal values. In practical terms, the aftermath of canceling a wedding was complicated. Financial arrangements, deposits, guest notifications, and logistical planning all required immediate attention and resolution, yet these external challenges were minor compared to the internal reckoning required. I navigated feelings of embarrassment, social scrutiny, and the disappointment of friends and family, understanding that the true cost of dishonesty is measured not in money or inconvenience, but in the erosion of trust and the emotional consequences that ripple through relationships. As time passed, I began to process the experience with clarity. I recognized the importance of establishing non-negotiable boundaries in any partnership, of seeking transparency in all areas of life, and of valuing integrity above convenience or appearances. The lesson was stark: love, commitment, and shared dreams cannot thrive in an environment of concealment. Trust is fragile, and without it, even the most carefully planned future cannot endure. Looking back, I understood that canceling the engagement, though profoundly difficult, was an act of self-respect and ethical integrity. It preserved the possibility of a future built on truth, honesty, and alignment of values. While it marked the end of a chapter filled with anticipation, it also reaffirmed my commitment to entering relationships with eyes wide open, with clarity of intention, and with the expectation that fundamental truths are shared openly. The experience reshaped my understanding of partnership. It taught me that love cannot compensate for deception, that commitment requires more than desire or affection, and that the foundation of any lifelong relationship must be built on mutual transparency. The revelation of her secret parenthood was a turning point, a catalyst for reflection, growth, and the reaffirmation of my principles. In the years that followed, I carried these lessons forward. I approached subsequent relationships with heightened awareness, an insistence on honesty, and a recognition of the vital importance of shared values. The memory of that canceled wedding remained a reference point, a reminder that integrity cannot be sacrificed for comfort, desire, or social expectation. It reinforced the principle that it is better to confront the truth even when it is painful than to proceed under the illusion of trust. Ultimately, the decision to end the engagement at the last minute was not merely an act of personal protection. It was a declaration of values, a refusal to compromise on honesty, and a commitment to enter the next chapter of life with clarity and self-respect. The experience, though marked by disappointment and emotional upheaval, became a defining moment in my life, shaping my understanding of relationships, integrity, and the necessity of confronting reality fully and without reservation. I emerged from the experience wiser, more discerning, and more attuned to the interplay between love, trust, and responsibility. The canceled wedding, once a source of anguish, transformed into a touchstone of resilience and ethical clarity. It taught me that relationships, no matter how promising, require transparency, alignment, and mutual accountability, and that any deviation from these principles carries consequences too profound to ignore. Through this journey, I learned to value not only honesty in others but also the courage to act decisively when deception threatens the foundation of trust. I discovered that self-respect is inseparable from integrity, that love without truth is unsustainable, and that the courage to confront difficult realities is essential for the pursuit of authentic, lasting connection. The engagement I ended at the last minute became more than a broken plan. It became a testament to the power of truth, the necessity of discernment, and the enduring importance of building life and relationships on a foundation of honesty. The weeks after the engagement ended were heavy with introspection and emotional turbulence. I felt an emptiness that I hadn't anticipated, not just from the absence of my fiancée, but from the dismantling of the life I had imagined with her. Every carefully planned detail of the wedding venues, flowers, music, the anticipation of vows now seemed like echoes of a life that never truly existed. I mourned not only the relationship but also the vision I had built around it, the shared dreams that had been predicated on honesty and trust. The loss was profound because it was both tangible and conceptual, a collapse of expectation and reality colliding in ways I hadn't anticipated. Yet, as the initial shock subsided, I began to recognize the liberation embedded within this difficult truth. The revelation, though painful, had saved me from a lifetime of compromise. From a commitment built on falsehood, I realized that the ending, abrupt as it was, allowed me to reclaim agency over my future, to realign my life with values I could not and would not abandon. The act of canceling the wedding became a declaration, not of failure, but of integrity, a refusal to enter a partnership without full transparency. In the solitude of reflection, I began to examine my own role in the relationship. I questioned whether I had overlooked subtle cues, ignored inconsistencies, or placed too much faith in verbal assurances rather than tangible evidence. I confronted my own idealism, recognizing that while hope and love are powerful, they must be tempered with discernment. I acknowledged that trust, once compromised at a fundamental level, cannot simply be restored through intent alone. Realizing this reshaped my understanding of relational dynamics, making me more attuned to signs of alignment or misalignment early in future connections. I also grappled with the social implications of the cancellation. Friends, family, and acquaintances expressed a mixture of support, confusion, and judgment. Many could not comprehend why I had acted so decisively at the last minute. Viewing the event solely through the lens of disappointment or disrupted plans, I understood their perspective. Yet I could not allow external opinion to outweigh my commitment to integrity. The decision, though socially inconvenient, was morally necessary. I learned that preserving ethical standards often requires standing firm even in the face of misunderstanding, scrutiny, or criticism. Over time, the emotional intensity began to evolve. The acute feelings of betrayal and shock gave way to reflection, acceptance, and eventually clarity. I recognized that the experience, while painful, had imparted lessons I could not have gained otherwise. I became more attuned to the nuances of honesty, more vigilant about aligning expectations with reality, and more committed to valuing integrity above comfort. Each reflection reinforced the importance of transparency, not only in romantic relationships but in all aspects of life. From professional commitments to friendships and family interactions, I also observed a subtle transformation in my perception of love itself. I came to understand that love, no matter how passionate or intense, cannot compensate for deception or concealment. Affection, compatibility, and desire are insufficient foundations if honesty is absent. The experience underscored the necessity of shared truth as the cornerstone of any enduring relationship. I realized that true connection is not merely emotional but ethical, rooted in mutual transparency and accountability. As the months passed, I channeled my energy into rebuilding my sense of self and reclaiming control over my future. I focused on personal growth, professional development, and cultivating relationships founded on clarity and trust. I became more deliberate in choosing whom to trust, more attentive to the alignment between words and actions, and more confident in asserting boundaries when fundamental discrepancies emerged. The experience had instilled a resilience that reshaped my approach to intimacy, commitment, and long-term planning. Reflecting on the canceled engagement years later, I could see its profound impact on my life trajectory. The moment of revelation had prevented a potential lifetime of compromise, conflict, and dissatisfaction. It had forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, to prioritize integrity over desire, and to cultivate discernment as an essential skill in relationships. I recognized that while the emotional cost was high, the long-term benefit preserving personal values and ensuring authentic alignment in future partnerships was immeasurable. The experience also informed my understanding of forgiveness and accountability. While I never excused my fiancé's deception, I learned that resentment alone cannot drive growth or healing. Instead, I focused on internalizing the lessons, understanding the consequences of dishonesty, and applying that knowledge proactively in my life. The cancellation became a formative experience, shaping my decisions, my standards, and my expectations in ways that strengthened my capacity for discernment and ethical clarity. Through ongoing reflection, I began to articulate a framework for future relationships grounded in transparency, mutual respect, and shared accountability. I realized that the foundation of love is not solely emotional but structural. It requires honesty, integrity, and alignment of life circumstances. Without these elements, even the deepest affection is vulnerable to collapse. The canceled engagement, painful as it was, crystallized this understanding with unmistakable clarity. In practical terms, the aftermath of the engagement also taught me resilience and adaptability. I navigated logistical challenges, social pressures, and emotional upheaval with increasing competence, learning to manage complexity without compromising values. The experience underscored the importance of proactive decision-making, ethical clarity, and the courage to act decisively in the face of deception. I internalized the lesson that difficult choices, though emotionally taxing, are often necessary for long-term well-being and the preservation of personal integrity. Over time, the memory of the canceled wedding evolved from a source of anguish to a touchstone of personal growth. I came to view it as a defining moment, one that clarified priorities, reinforced ethical standards, and strengthened my resilience. I appreciated the ways it shaped my approach to relationships, informed my decision-making, and cultivated a deeper understanding of trust, commitment, and personal responsibility. Ultimately, ending the engagement at the last minute was not an act of avoidance or weakness but a conscious decision grounded in self-respect, moral clarity, and foresight. It preserved the possibility of a future built on authenticity, safeguarded my emotional well-being, and provided a framework for navigating future partnerships with discernment and integrity. The experience, while emotionally turbulent, became a defining chapter in my personal narrative, shaping my understanding of love, trust, and the non-negotiable importance of honesty in human connection. The lessons endured, informing subsequent relationships, personal decisions, and the ethical framework by which I navigated life. I emerged stronger, more self-aware, and more committed to ensuring that every connection I entered was built on truth, alignment, and shared understanding. The canceled engagement, once a source of heartbreak, became a cornerstone of resilience, discernment, and ethical clarity, shaping my life in profound and lasting ways. Years passed, and the memory of the canceled engagement remained vivid, a constant undercurrent in my understanding of relationships and life. I watched as friends and acquaintances who had faced similar deceptions navigated their own paths, sometimes faltering, sometimes growing. And I reflected on how my decision had shaped my trajectory differently. While the emotional sting of betrayal had been profound, it had also equipped me with tools for discernment, resilience, and ethical clarity that became invaluable over time. I pursued personal growth with a deliberate focus, understanding that the lessons I had learned were not merely about romantic relationships but about the broader principles guiding human interaction. Trust, honesty, and integrity became non-negotiable aspects of every connection I cultivated. I approached friendships, professional relationships, and family interactions with heightened awareness, careful to discern alignment between words and actions before investing deeply. The pain of betrayal had sharpened my instincts, making me more attuned to inconsistencies, omissions, and hidden agendas. The years also offered a perspective that softened the intensity of initial anger and disappointment. I realized that my former fiancé's choices, while harmful to me, were also reflective of her own priorities, fears, and limitations. Recognizing this allowed me to release some of the personal burden of resentment and focus instead on how I could use the experience to cultivate wisdom and growth. The cancellation, once a sharp point of trauma, gradually became a reference for understanding human behavior, boundaries, and the consequences of deception in subsequent relationships. I applied the lessons learned with clarity. I asked deeper questions, observed patterns carefully, and demanded transparency in areas where alignment was critical. Love was no longer an abstract ideal. It was an ethical and practical partnership requiring mutual accountability. I discovered that the capacity to love fully and authentically is intertwined with the ability to trust, and that trust cannot exist when fundamental truths are concealed. The canceled engagement had illuminated the inseparability of love and honesty in ways that no conversation or theoretical reflection could have. As I moved further into adulthood, the experience continued to influence major life decisions. I approached career opportunities, financial commitments, and living arrangements with careful deliberation, understanding that deception or misalignment in any domain could have cascading consequences. The engagement had taught me the importance of clarity, foresight, and accountability not just in relationships but in all facets of life. I became meticulous in evaluating commitments, seeking alignment between stated intentions and observable actions. The long-term impact of the canceled engagement also extended to my emotional resilience. I learned to navigate disappointment, grief, and betrayal without allowing them to dictate my future choices. I cultivated a capacity for reflection, discernment, and strategic patience that allowed me to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. While the wound of deception never entirely disappeared, it transformed from a source of vulnerability into a wellspring of wisdom and strength. Over time, I also reflected on the societal and cultural lessons embedded in the experience. The pressure to maintain appearances, to proceed with plans despite fundamental misalignment, and to prioritize social expectation over personal integrity became clear. I understood that conformity to expectation could never replace ethical clarity, and that courage often involves defying convention in order to preserve values. The decision to cancel the wedding, difficult as it had been, demonstrated the necessity of placing principles above pressure, self-respect above social convenience. Years later, I revisited the memory not with bitterness, but with a nuanced understanding of cause and effect. I could trace the trajectory of choices, consequences, and personal growth with clarity, seeing how each element, the deception, the revelation, the decision to cancel, had shaped my development, values, and approach to life. I recognized the transformative power of confronting truth, even when painful, and the importance of refusing to compromise on foundational principles. Reflecting on the broader implications, I realized that my life had been profoundly enriched by the clarity gained through this experience. I cultivated deeper relationships, navigated challenges with greater foresight, and developed an ethical compass that guided both personal and professional decisions. The canceled engagement, once a source of emotional upheaval, had become a defining moment of empowerment, reinforcing the inseparability of trust, honesty, and authentic connection. Even as time softened the emotional intensity of the betrayal, the lessons endured. I approached life with a heightened commitment to transparency, a vigilant awareness of alignment in values and intentions, and a deep respect for the consequences of deception. The engagement that had ended in disappointment became a reference point, a marker of resilience, and a framework for navigating relationships with discernment and integrity. Ultimately, the experience taught me that the courage to act decisively in the face of dishonesty is essential. Love, desire, and shared plans are insufficient when fundamental truths are concealed. Integrity, clarity, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable realities are the foundation of lasting fulfillment. The canceled engagement became more than a personal narrative. It became a lesson in ethical consistency, a guide for navigating complexity, and a testament to the transformative power of truth. Looking back, I understood that the pain, shock, and upheaval were not wasted. They were the crucible through which resilience, discernment, and ethical clarity were forged. The engagement, though ended abruptly, had shaped my understanding of love, trust, and human connection in ways that no smooth or uninterrupted path could have provided. Its legacy was enduring, guiding every decision, relationship, and commitment I made thereafter. A reminder that the pursuit of authenticity is both challenging and essential. In the quiet reflection of adulthood, I acknowledge the full arc of the experience from discovery to decision, from grief to growth, from betrayal to wisdom. The canceled engagement was not merely a rupture, it was a pivotal moment of transformation, shaping my values, my approach to relationships, and my understanding of integrity. I emerged not only intact but strengthened, with clarity, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to living authentically, guided by the enduring lesson that trust and honesty are the pillars upon which any meaningful connection must be built.